Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Stone Woolbrick with the Ward Feature Planetarium, and we're here to start a brand new online series called Starry Storytime. This is where we get to share some of our favorite books with all of you. And I love to read. I don't know about you, but I love a good book. And so I'm very excited to share some of my favorite Starry stories with you. Now, the first book that I've chosen for our series is called Mousetronaut Goes to Mars. This was actually written by an astronaut Mark Kelly. He's gone to space, and he talks all the time about how he hopes for the next generation of astronauts to land on Mars one day and to explore one of our neighbor planets. So he decided to write a children's story about it, which I think is pretty amazing. So let's get started. The Galaxy rocket was just 1 week away from launching. It would be the first human mission to Mars. Even though Mars was Earth's neighbor, the astronauts would still need to travel more than 35 million miles to get there. And Meteor the Mousetronaut could not wait to go. See our little mouse? He's looking up. He's excited. This is a big rocket here. The astronauts had been training for 2 years for this trip. Meteor watched everything they did. Each day, he looked over the astronauts' shoulders as they studied, sat under the table, and listened while they ate, and kept a notebook of all the flight plan and procedures. That's Meteor the mouse under the table listening in, learning how to be an astronaut. Meteor was certain that he'd be going to Mars too. He might not be the biggest astronaut, but he had the power of small. He worked hard to stay in shape. He ran with Claudia. He did chin-ups with Claire. He lifted weights with Charlotte. The Mousetronaut was ready. But when the names of the crew were called out, Meteor's name was not one of them. The Mousetronaut was not on the list. NASA must have forgotten about their newest astronaut. There wasn't a chance Meteor was going to miss this exciting trip. He was small. He could hide. He would stow away. Our little mouse solving all his own problems. He's hiding. Slowly, carefully, he climbed the launch tower. Then, when the NASA security guard wasn't looking, he hid under the commander's seat. He tried to be as quiet as he could, but he was scared. He wasn't scared of the rocket launch. He was scared that he might get caught. All right, they're about to take off. Do you see it? Do you want to count down with me? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off! How is Meteor feeling? What do you think? The rocket shook. Meteor was pushed against the floor. He held on tight so when he wouldn't slide out from under the seat. There was a lot of vibrations, much more than he remembered from his launch on the space shuttle, but not enough to bother the Mousetronaut. 9 minutes later, they were in space. Meteor loved the feeling of weightlessness. That does look like a lot of fun, huh? When you're not on planet Earth, when you're out in space, you experience what's called microgravity. There's such little gravity in space that you're essentially weightless and you float around. It's amazing. It's got to be a really amazing experience. During the long journey, Meteor stayed hidden. He would only come out for crumbs when the astronauts slept. You see how the astronauts are sleeping? That's kind of odd, right? Is your bed like that? No, remember that when you're in space, you float around. So if you want to stay put while you're sleeping, you have to be strapped down. The astronauts are strapped down to their beds, sort of like sleeping bags with Velcro straps. And it might not be the most comfortable bed, but that's what they have to do in space. And as Earth got smaller and smaller behind them, the red dot that was Mars got bigger and bigger. After 6 months, they finally arrived. Meteor had stayed hidden the entire time. Wow, Mars is one of the closest planets to us, and it would still take 6 months in a rocket ship to reach it. That's a long time. When no one was looking, Meteor peeked through the window and saw the different shades of red and orange. Did you know that Mars was nicknamed the Red Planet? It's a very red-orange color. Mars was nothing like Earth, but it was beautiful in its own way. He also heard the astronauts making plans. 2 of them would go to the surface and explore Mars on foot with a rover. A rover is sort of like a robot or a big machine that can move around. I guess it's closer to maybe a car that doesn't need a driver. It drives around on its own. This is command station back home. When astronauts go into space, there's a lot of people that stay here at home and are responsible for their safety and the success of their missions. Uh-oh, there was a problem. The Galaxy's commander was talking to Mission Control in Houston. This is Mission Control in Houston, Texas, here in the US. One of the landing craft's engines had failed and its test wouldn't work. The remaining engine wasn't strong enough to carry even 1 astronaut. There would be no trip to the surface of the red planet. They would need to turn around and return to Earth. Whoa, that's a long journey just to turn back around. But the Mousetronaut had an idea. He shot out of his hiding place and surprised the crew. "Meteor, where were you hiding?" the commander asked. They were happy to see him, but still sad about their failed mission. Then Meteor floated over to the hatch leading to the landing craft. It is possible," said the commander. "1 rocket engine could work for someone small enough." It was decided. You see our Meteor the Mousetronaut, he's in his astronaut suit. Meteor the Mousetronaut would be the first to set on Mars. As he put on his spacesuit, the crew gave him instructions. "You need to gather plenty of rock samples," said one, "and don't forget to bring back some soil," said the other. Last of all, they made a tiny American flag and fastened it to a straw. Meteor tied himself to the seat of a landing craft with some string. It launched from the Galaxy spacecraft and made its way to the surface of Mars. See how red and orange Mars is? We've done a lot of studying of the dirt on Mars with rovers and not people, but machines that we've sent to Mars. But it would be really, really amazing to be able to get some rocks from Mars and some dirt or soil samples from Mars and bring them back home. We could learn so much more about Mars that way. The Martian landscape was unlike anything Meteor had seen before. There were no plants. There was no water that he could see. But most importantly, there were no cats. But he got right to work gathering the samples. The last thing he did before reboarding the landing craft was to plant the tiny flag that he'd been given. We did that when we went to the moon, when the US astronauts traveled about 3.5 days to land on the moon. They planted a flag. Meteor, you saved the day. See, he made the news. The Mousetronaut was the first on Mars. The crew cheered him as he returned to the ship. You'll be in newspaper headlines around the world. The Mousetronaut felt very proud. And we'll make sure you are on the next mission. We're celebrating. 6 months later, Galaxy rocket returned to Earth. The astronauts were all welcomed as heroes, but the smallest among them was the biggest hero of all. The end. That's a wonderful story, isn't it? In the back here is some descriptions of what Mars is like, what the planet Mars is like. We talked about, you could see that it was a very red planet, and that has to do with rust. Have you ever left a metal toy outside, like maybe a bicycle, or swung on a really old swing set, or maybe seen a really old car? A lot of times old metal like that will have this orange, flaky, crusty stuff on it we call rust. And that rust, it is all over Mars. It's all over the surface in the dirt and on the rocks on Mars, and that's why it has that red-orange color. In fact, if you find Mars in the nighttime sky, which I think right now it's in the morning sky before the sun comes up, you can see the color of the rust in Mars's dirt. It's pretty neat. You can look at Mars in the nighttime sky with just your eyes, and it has a red-orange color. So I hope you get to do that. I hope you get to see Mars in the sky. And maybe if you really like space and you work really, really hard for a long time, you might get to be an astronaut too. That would be cool, wouldn't it? Thank you all so much for coming out for our Starry Story Time, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.